Okay, so let's lock it in. Breaking news right off the top. The legal fate of Luigi Mangione now turns on a guilty plea in federal charges. Of course, this is in connection with that 2024 fatal shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Let's hear from the lawyers. First, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Then you're going to hear the attorney representing Luigi Mangione. Go ahead and listen.
This was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was deliberate, calculated, and premeditated. In the days leading up to the murder, the defendant very carefully prepared for the attack. He tracked Mr. Thompson's whereabouts, conducted surveillance along the route he knew Mr. Thompson would take, and positioned himself to carry out the plan.
As Luigi explained in court today, he endured years of severe, debilitating pain following a broken back while struggling to navigate our healthcare and health insurance systems. Like the thousands of people who've reached out since this tragedy to share their own experiences, he believed that the system had failed him and destroyed his life. Despite this being a single isolated event, Mr. Mangione has been unfairly treated since the outset in every way and has successfully fought off terrorism charges and the death penalty.
All right, so now a statement from the victims in this case, the family of Brian Thompson, married father, 2 children. They said in part today's guilty plea marks an important step towards justice for Brian and for our family. They go on to write, while nothing will ease the pain of losing him, we are grateful that the federal justice system has held the person responsible for this heinous act accountable. Live now to New York City, and CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman outside of federal court. You were on the inside. You saw all of that play out when Mangione spoke. It was so striking to hear him talk about what he did and why he did it. This is the first time the public has really heard his account in his own words. Walk us through that, Katrina.
Reed, that's absolutely right. And even more powerful with Brian Thompson's family and friends looking on, wiping away tears. Brian Thompson's wife was watching Luigi Mangione very closely as he read his statement where he admitted to this crime. Reed, he talked about how after years of back pain, he decided that he was going to go to this annual conference UnitedHealthcare was holding and pursue killing Brian Thompson. He even told us about how he had reached out trying to find out the location of where it was going to take place. He didn't know, so he reached out as an investor, Reed. And he said when he did that, he heard back right away. He got the information about the location, and then he ended up going and shooting Brian Thompson. Some powerful words he read, Reed, were, I understood my actions, I knew what I was doing, and admitted to shooting Thompson in that courtroom.
This closes the chapter on his federal case. Now, of course, the state case is in queue, but let's talk about the federal sentence. Obviously, prosecutors would like to see him spend the rest of his life behind bars.
That's right, and the judge made it very clear, Reed, that this sentence is completely up to her, and she told Mangione he could face up to 2 life prison sentences for these 2 stalking charges that he pled guilty to. She said this would be completely at her discretion. There is no parole in the federal system. Along with those years in prison, he could potentially face up to $500,000 in fines. And twice in court, she told him, you cannot withdraw this guilty plea. So once he affirmed it multiple times in that courtroom, Reed, he cannot take this back, she says. So ultimately, in December, there will be a sentencing hearing. Before that, there is a pre-sentencing interview that will take place, and then all of this, these different recommendations, letters will go to the judge, and she will ultimately have the say here.
All right, so the federal case, now that chapter is closed. Of course, those stalking charges you see right there, count 1, interstate stalking resulting in death. Another count, stalking through use of interstate facilities resulting in death. But then you see over on the state side, we're talking about second-degree murder, criminal possession of a weapon, forgery. Those are different. But you heard Mangione's attorneys say he shouldn't be tried twice for the same crimes. But the charges are different. Talk to us about the state case, Katrina.
They are, and I was just speaking with a source in the district attorney's office, Reed, and they are not backing down. They intend to continue pursuing their claims until there is a resolution here. They say that they want justice for the family. They want to know what the sentence is going to be here. So that case is not going away yet. But of course, the defense is already pursuing a double jeopardy claim. Now, New York double jeopardy law is unique. It's different from federal double jeopardy law. So it is not entirely clear that the defense will win on that argument here, Reed. But it is very likely that it will at the very least delay that state trial that is currently supposed to start in September. I also just want to add a little bit of color. So our reporter from CBS New York, Alice Gaynor, when Brian Thompson's family was leaving the court today, said that a man was yelling at them, talking about how people support Luigi, how they love Luigi. So this was a very difficult day for them. They got this guilty plea in court. They got to see Luigi Mangione admit to what they did to Brian Thompson, but there is still this public atmosphere that they were subjected to as well. She saw a supporter crying in the bathroom as well over this. He has that whole fan base that has been attending all of these hearings. And when I talked to some of them before the hearing started, they said even if he pled guilty, they believe that the defense had a plan here and they would still be on his side.
And still, the prosecution stood outside on those steps we see there behind you and made it very clear, presumably talking to some of those supporters of Luigi Mangione, that murder is not a message. Thank you so much, Katrina Kaufman. Great work today.
Thanks.
Now let's continue the conversation live with CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, your take on the defense's decision here to have Mangione plead guilty to these federal charges?
Well, obviously, it's a decision that's going to have huge consequence, and I think you can view it as a potentially risky decision with a potential huge payoff. What we know, of course, today is that he has agreed to plead guilty to those 2 federal stalking charges. They carried a maximum of life in federal prison. Obviously, they're hoping for much less. But in terms of the impact, we have to look, as we've been talking about, not just at the federal case, but also the state case. For Mangione, he's hoping that this has a huge impact on the state case and that it, in fact, makes it go away, because New York does have, under New York law, state law, not constitutional law, but under New York state law, there is a provision that says you don't get to prosecute people successively for the same course of conduct or same set of facts. He's going to argue that's what will happen if he faces that murder trial in New York State court. But on the other side of the impact here, he has now made a number of admissions about his conduct in open court, in a federal court, to a judge. And so if that New York case does go forward, I think what you can absolutely expect to see is the prosecution saying, we'd like to now introduce to the jury the admissions that Mangione made in open federal court to a judge. So again, I think that Mangione, for his attorneys, his strategy here was likely to try and get a reduced sentence in the federal case, and then, of course, to try, although I think it'll be uphill, to try and get that state case thrown out on double jeopardy grounds.
He got very granular in what he said in court, the plotting, the planning, the phone calls, the silencer, even printing parts for a 3D ghost gun. It'll be fascinating to see how that lands when the arguments happen in state court. Jessica, do you see the calendar shifting for that state trial because of this? It looks like now all that's transpired today, breaking out of New York, means that a lot of attorneys are going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're having this conversation in the middle of August. I'd be very surprised if the state trial does go forward on September 8th, because I think there will be litigation, or I should say I would be surprised, because there will be litigation about this double jeopardy issue. We know that based on the statements outside of court, Mangione's attorney said, we've already filed in state court to try and get that case tossed. We know that the prosecutors will be able to respond. Then there will be a reply brief from Mangione, and then there will likely be a hearing on that issue. And then, of course, as you know, Reed, there could be an appeal based on that determination. And so I would be, again, surprised if you could wrap all of that up within the next 3 weeks. Certainly not impossible, but I don't think it's likely.
Okay, Jessica Levinson, thank you so much for your insights today.